So I noticed that some of you, 19 at last count, actually watched the video that I did on the McGregor Mayweather. I keep trying to say Merriweather, but Mayweather fight boxing match. This is actually kind of a working video. I'm making an Osage bow, and because I don't have the skills to edit, I'm going to kind of walk you through it. However, I strongly believe that in some cases the handy tidbits that I'm going to be throwing out there may benefit you. So this one, watch it. If you're not watching this, watch it right now. Irony. Osage, along with black locust, and some disagree, I'm going to also say red elm, and mulberry are woods that you have to work down to the heartwood. The sapwood is not a good solid structure for a bow, so you have to work down to the heartwood. On Osage, let me move this up here. It's kind of burnished on end, but you can see the growth rings. Now for those Osageists out there, and I would agree if I just saw this, you would say that I didn't work it down to a thick enough growth ring. Because of this pith issue right here, I have to work it down to a point where I'm not going to be into the pith, because it's going to be a bend through the handle bow. And so by necessity, I either throw this piece of wood out, not use it, or else I use it for a bow and back it. I'm going to have to back this bow because I've worked to a thin growth ring. Let me just clamp this down here, and I'm not going to like actually grind on it, because I've worked it down to a growth ring and I haven't violated any fibers and did a pretty good job. Draw knife. This you need to have to work Osage or black locust or whatever. Maybe scrapers, but draw knife is it. Not a super razor sharp draw knife, because you don't want to cut through. Sharp enough. This one actually is sharper on this side than this side, and I utilize that for various purposes on working Osage. Not super sharp. I'm going to say this is sharp-like, but not super sharp on this side. I'm not a puller when I work Osage. If you've tried, and had difficulties in working it, first of all, you have to have the proper light so you can thoroughly analyze the growth ring pattern, because sometimes it can get a little confusing if you're working under substandard lighting conditions. The next is, this was made from a half piece, and instead of just working the back down, I worked the entire piece down. I want to see where the pin knots are, because it's going to be a narrow bow, and it actually, though it's more work, I actually want to see a clean growth ring throughout, and then I trim it. For rough trimming, and I'm going to show you my lions, is that this is not the end-all exact outline of this bow. This is merely a serving suggestion. I lined it up, and so it's straight through the handle, through the tip, and you can see it kind of goes like this. Side note, Osage is very easy to work when it's worked down to a manageable size, floor tillered and beyond bow, with dry heat. Don't boil it and don't steam it. There's no need to go to that extra expense and effort. Just dry heat. Rub grease into it and heat it, and it gets noodly. It works well with dry heat. But anyway, marked my lines. You can either measure it on a long bow, including the thin, deep handle, what have you. Anyway, rocket science, marking the lines. And when I work down, it's a combination of roughing it with the draw knife, and then I'm a grinder. This is going back to my early days when I worked with a rasp. Come on, I did it. At first I used this thing. I use this for a rasp. This is good for handle sections and tips and such, but compared to one of these jobs, good Italian steel, I had a question before, this is Bellota Classic, made in Italy, good steel. This thing works down well. Now this bow curves a little bit, and so I'm not doing it vertically, I'm doing it in relation to the back of the bow, working it down, getting within 3/8 of my lines, because I still want to have some room, wiggle room here, but I'm a grinder. I'm not a draw knifer, primarily. I'm a grinder and a rasper. When I get it to this point, and I'm coming up to a handy tip that you may or may not realize, I shall, with a huge grace margin, yeah, upside down, take my Scribe-O-Matic and scribe this. Ooh, don't pull in. Yeah, it's been a busy day, believe it or not. I scribe it to beyond, greatly beyond what I'm going to do. Now I've got this big old huge meaty piece of wood. What I like, if you haven't actually worked bows yet, what I like is first you start out with this big clunky piece of wood, and then you rough it down this way, which means you have less to work on this. Then you work this down, which means you have less to work on the face. And at every step of roughing it, roughing it, roughing it, roughing it, it gets faster and faster. So if you think that, oh, I don't have the patience to work that because it's just a big, giant, clunky piece of wood, trust me, it goes faster than you really think, because at every stage, trimming the sides, trimming the belly, trimming the sides, trimming the belly, it gets faster and faster until it works really fast. To remove this clunky piece, let me show you. I'm actually going to show you John at work here. And some people use this thing called a dumb head vise. It doesn't refer to the intelligence of it, but it's a treadle pedal, and then this thing that comes down. I actually like the advantage of my Jorgie here, Jorgensen, because I can work without touching it. My feet can be way over here. I can be tied to the wall. I don't need to apply pressure here. I'm calling this chunking it off. Chunking it off. A handsaw, my lines, and don't go to your lines. Don't go to your lines. On this bow, which is a D bow, going to be a D bow, at this stage it's going to be the same thickness throughout. If you have a deepened handled bow, start in the center and then chip your way, and you'll see what I mean, towards the tips, because it's going to be thick and then working thinner, and you don't want to split that handle off. I'm just going to do this once so I don't tell you up. And I tilt it up this way because I can't see that line on the other side. Yeah, got to go down a little bit. And I'm not getting to my lines. Not getting to my lines. I'm giving grace distance here, grace thickness, and more grace thickness on this. And then it's simply a matter of this hardwood, chipping it off. And that saves me the trouble of, I would much rather just saw and then, using my karate skills, chip it off, and that'll work that fast. These are remnants of not being formally trained at making bows. I learned this on my own and through books. And in the beginning, I didn't even have a draw knife. No draw knife. And I was able to make long bows with what I had on hand. I've always had hand saws. I've always had knives. I'd use this for a draw knife. My Western Cutlery W84. And instead of draw knife, I would just go split that off, stick it in the divots, not with Osage, but every other wood, and then just flick it and knock all those chunks off. And so, my friends, I'm going to leave it at that. I tempted fate. The people on the trails haven't come up in the nature center. I haven't had any more cars. There's a bunch of cars out in the parking lot, even though it's cloudy. I risked, for your benefit, making a video in the midst of a day in which I am multitasking and working. And so for that, buy my book, Subliminal Message. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate all your kind comments. You know, I make a living by talking, and words echo in your head after a while. And with that, I shall say adieu. And continue chipping my way through here. And I'm going to do a second one on this. I'm going to get this down, and I am going to show you, hopefully, you know, at this point of making videos, I'm not going to make any promises, but you'll see this thing working start to finish, more or less. More or less, maybe less, we'll see. Excellent.